It's one paper, and we begin. So, in Parshas Nosai, one of the big mitzvahs is, of course, the mitzvah of Nesias Kapayim, of Duchening. The mitzvah min HaTorah is a constant mitzvah. It's a mitzvah's essay not bound by time, which l'chayra would mean that every single day the Kohanim should bench us. And yet, outside Eretz Yisrael, if you daven by a Sephardish shul, you may be zoicha to get duchening every day. But in Ashkenazim, by Chassidim, we don't duchen daily. Even within Eretz Yisrael, although in Eretz Yisrael it's kind of universal that everyone duchens every day, it's not the case. It was always known that in the northern territories, in the tzafon of Eretz Yisrael, they were not makabel to do every day. And even amongst Lubavitch, there is a major controversy between Rabbanim as to what the practice should be today in Eretz Yisrael about duchening daily. And the question would be, what do you mean? Min HaTorah, the mitzvah applies every single day. Like what would be the issue? Like why wouldn't we do it? Chaparain, another mitzvah. You come to shul in the morning, how many mitzvahs min HaTorah do you have? There's just a couple. You have the Birkas HaTorah we do in the morning, which according to some is Deraisa. You have Kriya Shema, Tefillin, Talis. Who wouldn't want to chaparan another big mitzvah, especially one that's a bracha? Especially when the Kohen is so generous with his brachas and he has our best interests in mind. Why wouldn't we do it? So we're going to explore Mitzvah Hashem's 6 reasons of why this happened, and you tell me if the minhag should change, because there were people over time who very much wanted to change the minhag and bring it back, make duchening great again. The Alter Rebbe amongst them. In fact, the Alter Rebbe said that there were 3 accomplishments that he did that he was proud of, and there were 3 things that he wished he could have done. The three things that he was proud of, 3 zchuyas that he said, 3 merits that he has in the world of halacha, is in shchita, not to use iron knives, which are harder to sharpen, rather steel. The second thing is that mikvahs should be warm. In halacha, there's a big debate between Rabbeinu Tam and the Rivah, 2 contemporaries, 2 of the first Baalei Tosfos. The Rivah was a student of Rashi. And after Rashi passes away, the Rivah, Rabbi Yitzchak ben Asher, opens up a yeshiva in Germany. And after he passed away, many of his students went to France to learn by Rabbeinu Tam. So they were pretty much contemporaries. Rabbeinu Tam says a mikveh can't be hot, because once one becomes accustomed to purifying themselves in a hot mikveh, they'll do the same thing in their hot bathtub at home. And the Rivah says, no, you can have a hot mikveh. And it's been a machlokas for hundreds of years. The Alter Rebbe pushed that mikvahs should be warm, should be hot. The simple reason is that when the woman goes in, she shouldn't be jumping out. The moment she gets in, she should be able to, in other words, make sure she's properly toveling and the water is touching all the parts. There's no in her eyes and the creases and everything. If it's a cold mikveh, you're asking for trouble.
I thought you were talking about men's mikveh.
Well, it's both. Yeah. The truth is, the men's mikveh and Shabbos is a different issue altogether. About going into a hot mikveh on Shabbos is a different issue altogether. I remember there's a mikveh in Crown Heights, Mikveh Meir, right? And I believe Rabbi Ozdebe was part in giving the hechsher on the mikveh. And when he heard that the mikveh was very hot on Shabbos, he blew it. He said Shabbos should only be warm, not hot. But that's a separate halachic issue altogether. But this is the shaila in mikvahs. Rabbeinu Tam and the Rivah are arguing in mikvahs if it should be hot or not. And Alter Rebbe Dafka wanted to be warm. So it was the steel knives, it was the hot mikveh. And the third thing the Alter Rebbe was proud that he accomplished was about the beds of a husband and wife. It shouldn't be one big bed, separate beds. What were the 3 things the Alter Rebbe wanted to accomplish but didn't do? Number one, the Alter Rebbe said, if I had the strength, I would have been masakin that all Yidden keep 2 days Yom Tov, even in Eretz Yisrael. Yeah. 2 days everywhere. The second thing is,
Supported by anyone else in that?
He said if he could.
well, there's a major debate between the Rambam and the Ritva. Cities that are currently occupied. Yeah, Ilu Yashacheli, if I had the strength. Yeah, Emes. There's a debate between the Rambam and the Ritva, a city in Eretz Yisrael today which has been recently inhabited, but was not inhabited in the times of the Beis HaMikdash, and therefore the messengers of the Bezdin wouldn't reach there, so they should also have to keep 2 days, according to the Rambam, which would be many cities today. Kfar Chabad, I think the Rogatchover said the same thing about, I don't remember which city, either way. There were, but the Ritva disagrees. The Ritva holds anywhere in Eretz Yisrael always keeps 1 day. So if you're machmir like the Rambam, it makes sense to say that there are so many places that should keep 2 days, maybe make a sweeping rule over the whole Eretz Yisrael. But either way, the Alter Rebbe said, if only he could have done that, 2 days Yom Tov even in Eretz Yisrael. The other thing he wished he could do was to exchange, instead of saying L'chun Aran on a Friday night, to say Shir HaShirim. Going into Shabbos instead of L'chun Aran. Yeah. Instead of L'chun Aran. Instead of L'chun Aran, yeah. To do Shir HaShirim. And the third thing was to bring back Duchening every day. To bring back Duchening every day. So, 3 things. These are traditions that he had. The 3 things that he was proud by, Zalman Shimon Dvorkin told this over, and he received it from, in Lubavitch. And the other tradition about the 3 things he wanted to do, I think, might also come from Zalman Shimon, but it's written in Sfarim today. So, yeah. Yeah. So, okay. Right. Yeah. No, these things have been passed down from generation. I don't think anyone questions them. Either way. So what taka happened with Duchening every day? So number one, we start with number one, the Beis Yosef, Rabbi Yosef Kaira, going back almost 500 years ago. Kaira, yes. Kaira. Kosav HaOgur, the Ogur writes, he's one of the last of the Rishonim, in the 1400s. Shenishal Mahari Mulin. The Mahari Mulin is known as the Maharil. He's also in the early 1400s. One of the last of the Ashkenazic Rishonim. There was a whole group of Rishonim at that time known as like the tail of the Rishonim, and there was a whole group of Ashkenazim. There was the Ogur, the Maharil, there was the Trumas Hadeshin, there was Mahari Vayel, Mahari Bruna, a whole group of them. The Vilna Gaon felt that they were, they don't have the same, they're not as untouchable as the earlier Rishonim. We could argue with them, but nonetheless, they were 600 years ago. The Maril was asked, Lama ein hakoinim noisim kapeim b'chol yom. Why don't people duchen every day? Okay, so 600 years ago, this was already the widespread custom. But the shaila was why? Ma'achash or mitzvahs essay, it's a mitzvahs essay. And the questioners were bewildered, astonished. Like, why wouldn't we do it? So the Heishiv, the Maril said like this. There's a minig of koinim to go to mikveh before they duchen. K'moshe Kosev Bahagois Maimonides, who was a student of the Maram of Rothenburg, 100 years before the Maharil. So the koinim want to go to mikveh before they duchen. During the winter, if you expect them to go to mikveh every day in the winter, it's freezing, it's ice. You want the kohenim to break ice, you can't expect them to break ice. So therefore, what would they do? They just wouldn't duchen. Since they wouldn't duchen without going to mikveh, and it was hard to go to mikveh in the extreme weather, so the whole duchening was dropped. V'lochin olah haminig dafka b'yom tov. So it became dafka on Yom Tov. On Yom Tov, they'll go to mikveh, Also, maybe Yom Tov's not mamish in the middle of the winter. Yom Tov, especially Shavuos, is in the summer. But, they're not going Chanukah time, or during Tevis or Shvat. So, nicht gefährlich. So you see already in the times of the Maharil, the minig was only to do it on Yom Tov. There's a sefer called the Kol Boy. We don't know exactly who wrote it. Some say it was written by the Ba'adan of Lunil. So you're talking 12th, 13th century. In the Kol Boy it also says, the minig has become everywhere not to duchen every day, only on Yom Tov and Shabbos. And Shabbos though. So the Kol Boy brings a minig to duchen Yom Tov and Shabbos. In the Maharil it's very clearly, it's only Yom Tov. So you see, it went by stages. First, it was every Yom Tov and Shabbos. Then Shabbos was dropped too, because the Kol Boy was written before the Maharil. Says the Maharil, the Gam, there's another reason. Mitam bitul malacha. People are busy. People got to go to work. Who has time for duchening? Duchening takes to. What do you expect? All the mispalim should stay in shul till the kohen finishes duchening. People are busy. People have to make a living. And then he says further, Ukashar kohen eino nikra eino over. B'chlal, when does a kohen violate the mitzvah of not duchening? In other words, the Eibishter gives a mitzvah saseh for a kohen to duchen. If a kohen doesn't duchen, he breaks the mitzvah saseh. The Gemara in Soita says he actually violates 3 mitzvah saseh. Amor lehem, koysevorchu, etc. The Rambam, there's a famous Rambam. The Rambam says it's like his mavatal 3 mitzvah saseh, but it's really only 1. But either way, the Maharil says that the kohen only violates the mitzvah if he was called. If a kohen was summoned to duchen and he doesn't, he violates the mitzvah. If he's not summoned, so he's not over. So if in a regular day we don't call the kohenim, so then it's not such a big deal if we don't do the mitzvah. Ad kam l'shon of the Maharil. Says the Beis Yosef, dochak atzmo l'kayim minig mekoymai. He's really, squeezing over there to defend the custom. Now the Beis Yosef is living in Eretz Yisrael, right? So he's duchening every day. He says, ve'eino maspik, the explanations are not satisfactory. Kimasha kosav, the next line, this that he said, mepnei shenoigim litfol kodim. Very strange thing. Because the kohenim wanted to go to mikveh, and since half the year is too cold to go to mikveh, so they threw out the duchening. Who asked them to go to mikveh before they duchen? And he says in his words, it's a chumrah da'asi l'dei kulahi, a famous expression. Sometimes people take chumras, and the chumras really just lead to kulas. They took a chumrah to go to mikveh before, and instead, now there's no mikveh and no duchening either. Now there's nothing. Mishkoyach. V'toli tanya b'doloi tanya. They're taking something which is an obligation, which is taught, and they're hanging it on something which isn't taught. Shari Tvila l'nesis kapayim, going to mikveh before you duchen is not mentioned in Gemara. The im heim nogu lahachmir v'litfal, they have a personal chumrah, but loma yevatel b'shvil kach shalosh aseh b'chol yom. Why should they lose because of that? 3 mitzvah saseh every single day. Va'afal pisha eina over. The Maharil said, since we don't summon the kohenim, they don't transgress. They don't transgress, but we're still missing the mitzvah, right? You still don't fulfill the mitzvah. But unless he was summoned, fine, you're fine. The Eibush is not going to throw any lightning bolts at us. But we're still forfeiting all these mitzvahs. Better they should do the 3 assays every day of duchening. Not toivel, because it's too cold. Why? I'm sorry, kivin she'einu mechuyavim, because they're not mechuyev to. So better they should do the 3 mitzvahs aseh of duchening without the mikveh, misha yitvelu, than the other option, which is to try and toivel and vayidei kain, because they can't, because it's too cold. Yanichum l'kayim shalosh aseh b'chol yom. Meaning you have to weigh up the options. They can either go be gung ho about the mikveh, and since it's too cold, there's no mikveh and there's no duchening, right? Or they could just forget the mikveh and have the duchening. V'yasher koicham shel b'nei Eretz Yisrael. Go Eretz Yisrael. Yasher koich to them. V'chol malchus Mitzrayim. The minig in Egypt as well. Shenoisim kapeim b'chol yom. Every day. Now that was the minig of Mitzrayim, because Mitzrayim's right next to Eretz Yisrael. Maybe that was the minig from the times of the Rambam, but the einom toivim shus kapayim. The yasher koich is that they do duchen every day, and they don't get caught up in this mikveh issue. Now, the truth is, according to the Maharil, why in Eretz Yisrael would they duchen every day? In Eretz Yisrael, were they not careful about mikveh, or Eretz Yisrael never gets too cold? I'm just asking a simple question. According to the Maharil is living in Germany, Austria, gets freezing. The Maharil is being, even the Beis Yosef says the Maharil is for entering the custom of his place. The Maharil may very well recognize in Eretz Yisrael they did duchen every day. Was that because they didn't go to mikveh, or they were always able to? Maybe it's because it never gets too cold, they was always able to. So how does then and so too in Egypt. So Egypt never gets too cold. So how does the Beis Yosef know? I guess he lived in Eretz Yisrael, that's how he knew. But I'm saying strictly from the text, how would he know that they're not toivel every day? Maybe Eretz Yisrael Mitzrayim, they also toivel every day. But luckily enough, it never gets too cold. Okay, I'm just pointing that out. Fine. But Al Kaponim, this is the answer of the Maharil. Very interesting answers, because they need to go to mikveh. You're going to say duchen without going to mikveh? Can't be. And half the year is too cold, so that's it. Okay, fine. But Mitzrayim, right. Punkt where he lived. Yep. Nicht so kalt. Unless he was toveling in the Arizal's mikveh over there, then it's freezing a whole year, right? And the whole year it's freezing. Although I went to the Arizal's mikveh in the middle of Tevis, the coldest day of the year. And it was cold. It was cold, yes. Fine. That's what the Beis Yosef says.
Mashiach in the Shiva where I learned.
He's being very wise now.
What did you learn?
He used to go every day. In the winter, it was good on the beard of a lot of
Bicycles.
Mamish ice. What, in the Teich? He used to go. Wow. Anyhow, so this is, now if you notice, the Maharil threw in another answer. In the fifth line, the Maharil threw in, it's also Balabatim have to work. No one has time for duchening. The whole hour of davening we have time, but for the extra duchening, it's almost like whatever we're able to cut back on, we cut back on. Now, if I mentioned that the Kol Boy, which is, let's say, 100 years before the Maharil or so, depending on who wrote it, the Kol Boy also says that the minig, around the world, maybe excluding Eretz Yisrael, has become not to duchen every day, but he says we do it on Shabbos. And the reason he gives is also tircha de tzibur. The Kol Boy says already 700-800 years ago, people are in a rush. You can't hold people back because of the duchening. And you wonder, how long does the duchening take? And fakert, you want to go make parnasa? Look, maybe the best thing you want is a bracha from a kohen before you make parnasa. Meaning, but that's what the Kol Boy says, and the Maharil. They bring this a serious reason. That tircha de tzibur. We don't have time for these things. Exactly. Like why? I know. Listen, it's a very strange thing. From all the things that we threw out, like we mentioned in the beginning, there's only a couple things every day which are biblical. Most things are D'Rabbanan, Shmoneh Esrei, Birchas Kriyashma, and then so much of it is just minig. And that we have so much time for. But 3 mitzvahs essay every day, there's no time for. Go figure. Okay, we go to number 2. So this is an interesting thing. The Pri Chodosh, the great Pri Chodosh of Chizkiah di Silva, big Rav in Eretz Yisrael in the late 1600s. Unfortunately, he passed away young in his 30s. But he writes like this. In number 2, look in Sefer HaMiktzois. Sefer HaMiktzois is an early Sefer from the Rishonim, going back about 1,000 years ago. And the exact author is also subject to discussion. But it says there the following. Dehecha de'ika nida bebeisa de kohen. If the kohen has a nida in his house, the kohen's wife or the kohen's daughter, it's asur leila meisik l'duchen. He can't duchen. Kol eimas de'isei b'nidosa. As long as that woman is a nida. If a kohen has a nida in his house, his wife, or if he has any, daughters above bas mitzvah, which will be presumed to be nidas, he can't duchen.
That could be like 5
That's
years.
just when the
You could be.
I'm saying practically. I know. I'm saying practically like that age. But you're right, whenever.
What about a housekeeper?
No, the Chayrit's his family, but the truth is, you're right. Let me get to that in a moment. The Amar Rab Yudin said, you say if it's a guy, by a goyish woman, the niddah doesn't mean anything. But but hold on, I'll get to that in a moment. The Amar Rab Yudin said, Kol kohen shenoses kav, anyone that duchens, the imay, his mother, or ishtoy, or his wife, or his daughter is a niddah, v'nichnes hu ba'oisay bayis sheniddah sham. So Mela, she's in a different back house. You send her to the back house. But if she's in your bias, and you went into that room, tfilosay al Yisrael toyeva, when the kohen davens for the Yidden, it's an abomination. Va'afu goyim l'zare she'ya'avid min ha'olam. He causes that his children should be destroyed from the world. Wow. Let's continue.
Does somebody know if their mother is not? It's like, we just learned the Parsha of Moshe Rabbeinu says to Hashem, how am I supposed to go in and check? And Hashem says, don't worry, I'll tell you, and you count the people.
But if you know.
The whole halacha is based on that.
Well, Bito, once it happens once, until the girl goes to mikveh, she's in it. Weiter.
She wears a different.
Yeah.
You're on that level. You should be tell you.
I don't know what family it's quoting from. I didn't get a chance to check up. It sounds like Yerushalmi. It does sound like Yerushalmi. Yeah. Shalu Talmidiv Rabbi Akiva. That they asked Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Akiva, how are you zeicher to such beautiful wisdom? So Amalei said, Ma'olam lo yarharti l'dvarav. I never had a negative thought. V'loi dibarti im isha nida. I never spoke with a woman who's a nida. V'loi istakalti b'koinim. And I never looked at the koinim, I guess when they duchet. Fine. Shalu talmidim es Rabbi Shmuel ben Elisha, kohen gadol. They asked Rabbi Shmuel ben Elisha, the kohen gadol, Mipnei ma zachisa l'kuna gadol. Why are you a kohen gadol? Amalei ma'olam lo yikravti korban shanida b'seich beisi. I never brought a carbon when there was a nid in my house. Ad kan matzasi kafus. This is what I found, says the Pri Chodesh. Udvarim elu ein lefarsimam. Do not publicize this. Do not make a copy of this and learn it on Sunday morning in Shir. Do not publicize this. Deloi hei me'ikar adin, because this is not strict halacha. V'hanach li so shiur shoying value mazidin. Better don't tell people about it, and they'll still duchen, which would be deliberate. Let them not know about it, and they'll just be accidental. Inadvertent, correct. So, this is a whopping Sefer HaMiksois. That if someone has a nid in the house, they can't duchen, and if they do, oh boy, the tefillah is an abomination, it can hurt your kids, scary stuff. And the Pri Chodesh says, keep this under the table, under the rug. Don't tell people about this.
Now you told me.
I was just sitting at the edge of his seat.
But the once the Pri Chodesh paskin that these things shouldn't be publicized, it already takes the sting off the halacha. It already he put it under the table. He put it under the rug. Although he does say at the end, they'll just be shoygig. They'll just be shoygig. Anyway, so. There's a very important letter from Ephraim Zalman Margolis. Ephraim Zalman Margolis, Yigrada spoke about him the night of Shavuos, was a great Rav and a very wealthy man in the city of Brody, in the times of the Alter Rebbe, Mittel Rebbe.
He's in the back house.
I apologize. I'm sorry. I couldn't hold myself back.
You unhear that?
I could not hold myself back. I would have said it orally, but you wouldn't have believed me, so I had to put it on tape. Rabbi Ephraim Zalman Margolis is born around the year 1760. So, 15 years younger than the Alter Rebbe. He was a big banker, a wealthy man in Brod, and he was a huge Gaon. In fact, while he was in Brod, there were other people that were rabbis, but he's more famous than them. Not because of his wealth, but because of his forum that he wrote. The same guy. He's back. Ephraim Zalman Margolis. And the truth is that he wrote many Sfarim. One of them is on the laws of Elul and Tishrei, known as Matei Ephraim, and it's the most basic sefer that's used on the halachas of Tishrei. You know, he was a great, great man. The Alter Rebbe had a chassid, Reb Nechemya Dubrovna, who actually married the Alter Rebbe's granddaughter, who was a genius in Nigla. And he had a business. He used to manufacture talesim.
He filled up a couple halachas on the Alter Rebbe.
Yeah. Actually, Reb Nechemya of Dubrovna was very close with the Tzemach Tzedek, and originally they did business together. When the Tzemach Tzedek was younger, the two of them owned some type of factory. Now, the factory was in process, in session, and there was something cooking there and boiling, and the two of them got in a heated debate in learning. And both of them, you know, they were distracted. The thing blew, and the whole factory burnt down. And the Tzemach Tzedek said, I don't think this partnership is going to work. And that was the end of that. But Nechemya Dubrovna, he started his own talis manufacturing plant, and he was successful. But he wasn't the rabbi in his city. And the Rav of his city was once dealing with a very difficult halachic issue, and he needed to send it to Brod, to Ephraim Zalman Margolis, to get his opinion. How was he going to send it to Brod? Because Nechemya Dubrovna, through his business contacts, he had people maybe taking some merchandise to Brod. So the Rav asked Nechemya Dubrovna, can you give this to your people that are going to Brod? Nechemya Dubrovna looks at the shaila, takes out his pen, and on the side, he writes his own footnotes. And he signs his name as Nechemya, the talis manufacturer. When the shluchim brought the letter to Brod, Ephraim Zalman Margolis reads the letter, and then he reads the footnotes on the side, and he almost drops the paper. He says, are all the talis manufacturers in Lubavitch such scholars? Anyhow, Ephraim Zalman Margolis he wrote very, very important works, and he has a tshuva in his Sefer Beis Ephraim all about this issue. What happened to Duchening every day? And he starts off by saying, listen, people want to bring it back. He says it's already 500 years. Now, this is 200 years ago. So he says it's already 700-800 years ago from today that Yidden don't do it, and it's been recorded by the great Rishonim, the Maharil, the Kolboy, even the Maram of Rottenburg. He had a student known as the Tashbates Cotton, Shimon ben Tzadok. He actually used to visit when the Maram spent the last couple of years of his life in jail. Right, he was arrested in the year 1286, and he spent 7 years in prison till he died. He wouldn't let them ransom him. The Tashbates used to enter, and just like Reb Shimon Bar Yochai used to learn from Rabbi Akiva when Rabbi Akiva was in jail the last 3 years of his life. And the Tashbates writes, and therefore we assume he heard from Maram of Rottenburg, the same idea that we don't do it in Chutz La'aretz. So Ephraim Zalman Margolis writes 200 years ago to his questioners, where did the minig go? He said, before we learn where the minig went, first you have to know the minig is gone. It's been established. This is what he says. The minig it's established and accepted that we don't do it every day. He says the shach was a kohen, and the shach didn't bring it back. Right? The shach's kohen didn't bring it back. He says, so you want to know where it went? And he goes on a long tshuva with lots of discussion, and we'll mention a bit of it. But in his tshuva, he mentions this thing we saw in number 2 from the Sefer HaMiksois. And he says, maybe this is the reason. Based on the Sefer HaMiksois, it's dangerous to duchen when someone has a nid in his house. Chances are, between the wife and the daughter, there's very likely someone who's a niddah, and you're in the same house.
Why would Yom Tov be
So how we do duchen?
Why would Yom Tov be different?
They still have it in the house.
That's a chance.
Huh?
Not every day, so it's a small chance.
No, but it's
Between daughter.
A person goes to mikveh. A person chayiv adam l'tar atzmei beregel. A person's chayiv to go to mikveh on Yom Tov, assuming the kohenim go to a proper good mikveh on Erev Yom Tov, so perhaps they cleanse themselves from that impurity.
That's Erev Yom Tov, the next day is when
Yeah. So the truth is, I wonder. When the Sefer HaMiksois says the house, it could be the room. It could be the room. Yeah, specifically the room. just like Uchsavta Mamazusa is Beisecha, it means every room of your house. The Torah says Bayis, but Bayis means every room is a separate house. And therefore, if you go to Mikveh Erev Yom Tov, if the husband knows that the wife's a niddah or something, so that night the Kohen would sleep in a different room. There's a Rashi in Tehillim that says when someone's wife's a niddah, they should sleep on two different sides of the house. Whatever. You sleep on different sides of the home, so it could very well be they go to Mikveh Erev Yom Tov. If he knows the wife's a niddah, they're on different sides of the home, a different room, and then he duchens the next day. What should I tell you? The base Ephraim Zamargola says that he thinks this itself could be enough of a rationale not to do it every day. Fakir, the shah is why you do it on Yom Tov, but every day, you see what it says here, right? The repercussions can be quite serious. Fine.
He has to move into his back house every day.
We continue. So far we've seen three reasons. We saw the reason of the call boy and the reason of the Ma'aril that it's Pasha Tirchid Tzibur. No one has time for this. We saw the Ma'aril's reason of the mikveh, that they want to toivel every single day and it's too cold to toivel in the winter. And we see the Sefer HaMiksois that the Bri Chodesh quotes, and Ephraim Zamargolis wants to say, based on that, it makes sense why the minhag has kind of dropped from doing it every day. But we continue. We come to number 3. Very strange. When it comes to the bracha of Duchening, the Kohanim say, the Eibishter commanded us to bench the Yidden with love. Now the truth is, every single mitzvah has to be done with love. Ava and Yira. And yet we never say in a bracha that Hashem commanded us to do this mitzvah with love. Right? Why would it be when it comes to Duchening? Why is it part of the bracha? Duchening has to be done with love more than any other mitzvah. Every mitzvah needs to be done ba'ava. So the Magen Avraham says in number 3, ba'ava, why is the custom to say the word ba'ava? Nearly it seems to me, the Pirushim Moshe Kosev b'Zohar. The Magen Avraham quotes the Zohar. The Magen Avraham stood out in the fact that he quotes from Kabbalistic sources for his halachic psakim. He quotes often from the writings of the Arizal, which was something novel, and often from the Zohar. It says in Zohar, Kol koyin dolo rachim la'ama, any koyin that does not love the people, oy amo loy rachim, or the people don't love him, lo yisakapav should not duchen. It's a Zohar in this week's parasha, Parshas Nasai, where the Zohar says if a koyin and the people don't really get along, he should not duchen. And the koyin says a story. The Zohar says a story. There was a koyin who, was at odds with the people in the shul, and he duchened, and he passed away because he duchened when he wasn't supposed to. You see, this is fiery stuff, So says the Magen Avraham, based on the Zohar, you see, when it comes to wearing tefillin, we don't say that if you can't muster up the love, don't put on tefillin. We don't say that, but
He's like a chazan. He represents the people. He bring the message from Hashem to him. If it's not clear how he saw it,
he's representing the people.
Like
He's the pipe through which the bracha comes from Hashem to us.
Like Tkiyah Shofar.
But in order for him to be a proper pipe, he can't let negative feelings get in the way. So in other words, when it comes to other mitzvahs, we never say that if you can't muster up the love, don't do the mitzvah, right? So of course you have to do other mitzvahs with love, but it's not like a prerequisite that if you can't muster up the love, don't do the mitzvah. But by duchening it is. By duchening the Zohar says it is. So therefore, since Avo is such a prerequisite, that's why in the Nusach of the Bracha, the Kohanim say, Hashem commanded us to bench them with love, because if you can't muster up the love, you can't bench. Okay, that's what the Magen Avraham says. So this takes us to number 4. There are quite a number of Kohanim which, although maybe strictly halachically they're able to duchen, but there became a custom that they don't or they don't have to, and we'll just mention 2 of them. One of them is an oval. The Shulchan Aruch and the Ramah have a debate. Rabbi Yosef Kaira paskins that an oval, what?
I think it's kava.
Rabbi Yosef, Lamais and oval.
I didn't.
What? This thing is not for a year.
They say if somebody calls you
Right, exactly. Yeah, so that's... No, so here's the thing. Rabbi Yosef Kaira says, during Yeshivas Yemei Avelus, we're number 4, Yetzim Beis HaKnesses B'Shar Shekera Kohanim. If it's mamish during Shiva, let's say it's Yom Tov and you're in Shul, or Chveis, or in your Eretz Yisrael, it could be any day. But if it's during actual Shiva, then you should leave the Shul. You shouldn't be there. But after Shiva, Rabbi Yosef Kaira says Yiduchim. The Ramah says V'yesher Mimna the whole Zman HaAvelus, the whole Afilu Ad Yud Beis Chodesh, for a year on your father Val Imoy Eino Noises Kapov, for a whole 12 months. And that's from the Mordechai and Agois Maimoni, who are both students of the Maram of Rothenburg, who's like the chief, one of the chiefs amongst the Ashkenazic Rishonim. V'chein noigin b'medinas elu. The Ramah says the minig in these countries, in Poland, where he was that taka all 12 months not. Now the truth is, the Alter Rebbe taka says in Shulchan Aruch that if your minig is not to duchen for the whole 12 months, make sure you're not there when they call Kohanim. I mean, Rabbi Yosef Kaira says even during Shiva, where he agrees you shouldn't duchen, right? So there, everyone agrees you shouldn't duchen. But make sure you're not there. So for sure, the whole 12 months where there's a machlokes, if you should or you shouldn't, if you don't want to, then you make sure you're not there when they call Kohanim. Fine. So that's one debate. We continue. Look at the next, still in number 4. Kohen afal pishu hu nosui. Panui. Thank you very much. I'm saying things. A bacher, does a bacher duchen? Bachim always duchen. Well, not so fast. There was a big debate in the Rishonim. There was, in fact, between the Sfardim and the Ashkenazim, the Rashba, the Rav of Barcelona, was asked in a letter, what's the deal, should a bacher duchen or not? Why shouldn't a bacher duchen? Because the Gemara says in Yevamos, anyone who's not married is not blessed. They don't have bracha and they don't have simcha. Someone who's not married is not really happy. And a prerequisite to duchening is to be in a good mood. Just like we saw in number 3, that the Kohen has to be on good terms with the people. And it's about Ava. Ava and Simcha are very much synonymous. And if somebody's not in a state of joy, they really can't produce the necessary Ava to give the proper bracha. So somebody asked the Rashba, being that the Gemara says that until you're married, you're not truly happy, then maybe you can really give a true bracha. So the Rashba says, come on, that's extreme. I never heard such a thing. The Rashba says, I know there's one person who says that, but I think it's rubbish. And the Rashba says you should definitely duchen. So in fact, that's what Rabbi Yosef Kaira in the bold says, we're in number 4, the 4th line, Kohen, afa pishul pone, even if he's a bachelor, noi says kappa viduchens. And Rabbi Yosef Kaira, who's a Sfardi, is following the Rashba, who is a Sfardi too. But the Ramos says, v'yesh aimim not, the eino noi kappa, some say he shouldn't. Da shore b'lo yisha, shore b'lo simcha, because it says in Yevamos, someone who doesn't have a wife is not truly happy. As they say, before you're married, you're incomplete. After you're married, you're finished.
How would you relate this to Baal Koreh? Shouldn't you be the same?
Baal Koreh?
Well, shouldn't you be happy also? Only happy?
No, a Baal Koreh can be, a Baal Koreh can cry as he lands, as long as he lands. It's not a bracha. It's just like, listen, every mitzvah has to be done with joy. The Baal Shem Tov, Chassidus teaches us. I actually once heard a Litvish Rav saying, I don't get these Chassidim. They're always besimcha. It says, Ivdu es Hashem besimcha, serve Hashem with joy. He says, that's when you serve Hashem. But the rest of the time? That's what he said. So that the truth. Then I realized that's the crux of the machloikas. The machloikas between Chassim and Snagdim is not about being happy or not. It's exactly. It's when you serve Hashem. It's how do you judge serving the Eibishter? By a chassid, changing it, getting stuck on the side of the road and changing your tire is also, whatever you might be doing, as mundane as it may be, it's all serving the Eibishter. So this is, and the Va'amavorach Yesh Aliyas B'Simcha, the bencher has to be happy. And he quotes from the Mordechai. The Mordechai. So the Mordechai be'emes is machmir on both. The Mordechai is the one that holds the oval shouldn't duchen for all 12 months. And more than that, someone who's not married, who never tasted true joy, right? This is how we get everyone to get married. This is you don't know what true simcha is, etc. And who said marriage is a great institution, but who wants to live in an institution, right?
It's Phil Rothman.
So but in the first machlokes, okay, fine. But when it comes to duchening, when someone's a bocher, it was a debate between the Rashba, who said you should, and the Mordechai says you shouldn't, and the Ramah quotes the Mordechai, Yeshoimim not to duchen. But v'nagu, the minig is shenois a cup of afal pishein and noser. The minig is already the bocher benches. But umikol makom haroitz shaloi lisa cup of emechem biyadai. If a bocher wants to be machmer and say, I don't feel like I'm able to bench, he has the right to make that decision, and we can't tell him anything. Raksha, he shouldn't be in shul when they call kohenim or when they tell them to wash their hands. Fine. So these are two interesting debates. The oval, which is a debate between the Beis Yosef and the Ramah, and the Panui, the Bacher, which is a debate between the Rashba and the Mordechai, and then continues to be a debate, perhaps, between the Beis Yosef and the Ramah, although the Ramah concedes that the minig is that Bachrim do it. When it comes to Avelus, the minig is not to, right? And it's inconsistent, because the Mordechai was machmir on both. The Ramah takes the Mordechai for the Avelus, but it doesn't take the Mordechai for the Bocher. Well, the answer is simple. When someone's in Avelus, they're in Avelus. But before Bocher's married, he's quite happy. Bochrim are living up the life. They don't seem to be too perturbed. Unless, the truth is, if somebody's very much looking for a shidduch and is having a hard time, maybe then he shouldn't duchen,
Right.
Anyhow.
Mordechai was the same time as the Rashba.
Pretty much, yeah. The end of the 1200s, yeah. The Mordechai passed away first. The Mordechai was killed in 1298 in the Rheinfleisch massacres in Germany. About 25,000 Yidden were murdered. The Mordechai was killed with his family. The Gois Maim and the students of the Maram Rottenberg were all killed. The Rashba passes away a couple of years later in 1310. So they're contemporaries. Anyhow, but what do we see from all this? We see that there's an idea when a kohen duchens, he needs to be in the right mood. He needs to be able to bench with love. He needs to be able to bench besimcha. To the point that an oval, the Mordechai says shouldn't do it, and the Ramah says azoy is the minig, and we confirm that over here as well. Some people have that minig. And the Mordechai goes further that even a bacher shouldn't, ponui, because if without a wife, you don't really know true joy. And the Magen Avraham pointed out that in the text of the bracha we say the mitzvah has to be done with love. So you see that joy is mamish a prerequisite for duchening. So look at the Ramah. The Ramah continues. Nagu, we're still in number 4. The next in the wide lines, the second one. Now that Ramah deals with the minig about not duchening every day. Nagu b'chol medinas elu. We're noig in all these medinas she'ein noisen kapayim ela b'yom tov. We don't duchen except for Yom Tov. Not Shabbos either, like the Maharil said. Mishum sha'oz shruyim b'simchas Yom Tov. Because in Yom Tov we're happy. The toiv leiv hu yevayrich. That's actually from the Zohar. The Zohar quotes the pasuk, toiv leiv hu yevayrich means someone who has a good eye will be benched. The Zohar says, don't read yevayrich elo yevarech. Someone with a good eye should bench. The Baal Shem Tov famously said that if someone has guests Friday night, the Baal Habayis should lead the mezuman, because since he's the one that invited the guests, he's the toiv leiv or toiv ayin. He had the good heart and the good eye. So hu yevarech, he should bench. He said the same thing as the Zohar. Don't read yevarech, be benched. Rather yevarech, bench. What?
But we give to the guests to
Friday night, no.
That depends what your custom is. Everyone has.
Friday night's about buying.
Right, because of the Baal Shem Tov said this.
No, I'm the mezuman after for the benching for the seudah, the katamazon.
Yeah. Anyhow, this word that the Rama is quoting is straight from the Zohar. The Zohar applies this pasuk by Duchening. In fact, that's when the Zohar, the Magen Avram quotes in number 3, the Zohar learns it from this pasuk. So that's what the Rama is referring to. This Zohar continues the Rama. Masha enkem b'shar yomim. Afilu b'Shabbos Hashan. Even on Shabbos, you think people are happy on Shabbos? No. Shetrudim birhurim al michyasim v'al bitum malachtam. Shabbos people are on edge that they have to take a day off from the parnasa. It's hard. Shabbos is hard, and even b'Yom Tov, not by Shachris. Because Yom Tov by Shachris, you still have a long time to go. No one's in a good mood. Yeah. Only Musaf, when you're about to exit, then you're in a good mood. Ein noisin kapayim elabit filis Musaf, he says, sheyotzim avne beis hakneses, because that's when you're about to leave. V'yismechu b'simchas Yom Tov.
The kid is
height,
waiting.
exactly. The pinnacle, the height of a Jew's joy is Musaf on Yom Tov.
That's great.
Anyhow, that's and you see in the brackets, Divrei Atzma. This is the Rama's own idea. But the Toiv Lev Hu Yevarach is from the Zohar. Now the Zohar doesn't say not to do it every day, but the Rama is basing if you mamish have to be in a good mood to the point that, like we saw 3 things. The Mordechai says an oval shouldn't duchen. The Rama paschet. The Rama quotes the Mordechai about the bocher not duchening, right? And even though the Rama says the meaning is that bocher duchen, but he gives room. If a bocher doesn't want, I understand him, because he doesn't really have true joy. And the Magen Avram says that's why we say the word ba'ava in the text of the bracha. So the Rama says based on all that you understand why the minig became not to duchen every day. Now why in Eretz Yisrael do they? Eretz Yisrael they're happy. Eretz Yisrael they're joyous. In Eretz Yisrael they're joyous.
We also have it. As far as also have it.
There's a Gemara in Eruvin that says a Yidden in Chutz La'aretz are shchudas v'loy meyayin. The Yidden are shikir in Chutz La'aretz from their worries about Parnasa. But in Eretz Yisrael, it doesn't get to them the same way. That's what it says. The Yisrael doesn't get to them the same way. The tirdas of Parnasa doesn't ebit them the same way that they lose their joy. So that's taka the reason why in Eretz Yisrael they did, in Chutz La'aretz they don't. So that's reason number 4. So far we saw either Tircha de Tzibura, we saw the Ma'aril, they can't go to mikveh in the winter. We saw the Sefer HaMiksois, maybe there's a nid in the house. Then we see the Ramah, because these days in Golus and Chutz La'aretz we're just not happy. What?
Yeah.
Yeah. Sfardim. Yeah, Parnasa. Sfardim are always happy. Sfardim tmidim b'simcha.
Why do they? Is there a reason why they do
Why?
it?
Yeah, because the Sfardim don't let the issues of Parnasa get to them.
No, is there a Kabbalah why they do it? Is there a reason somebody...
The question's on us. They do it because it's a mitzvah min HaTorah to do it. It never became their minhag not to.
So they never had that. Like we had
Right, but exactly. When exactly became our minhag, we don't know. We know it's at least 800 years old from the times of Maram Rottenberg. But we can't give a date or a person.
They never had that.
Exactly. It was a minhag in Germany, basically. That's pretty in Ashkenaz. That's mamish that's where the Maram Rottenberg is. That's where the Mardi Mullen there. Okay, the Kolboy may have been written in France.
The Alter Rebbe mentioned that once, that he wanted to, if he have able to change it.
Yeah, he would have brought it back. So now you know why the Alter Rebbe wanted to bring it back, because Chassidus demands joy. The Alter Rebbe says now everyone's happy. We got to bring it back. Now you understand. The Alter Rebbe, what's too late?
It's so many years already they changed the custom.
Well, that's the Shaila, because first the Alter Rebbe in his Shulchan Aruch, he brings this reason of the Ramah about joy. So it makes sense why the Alter Rebbe said, well, now that Yid learns Chassidus, a person can elevate themselves to a point where the issues of Parnasa doesn't have to ebit them and doesn't have to really,
take over.
Yeah, and weaken their spirits and sadden them. And therefore, we really should bring it back. The problem is it too late? So that's what the Beis Ephraim Zalman Margolis, let's go back to his letter just for a moment. In his Sefer Beis Ephraim, so like we said, he's living 200 years ago plus, and he was asked what happened to the duchening every day, and he starts off by saying the fact it's been established that we don't do it, and he quotes all the people. He quotes the Shach, who was a Kohen, the Smer was a Kohen, and all the Rishonim we mentioned who condone this practice. Not just that, even Rabbi Yosef Kara, number 1, when the Beis Yosef says he doesn't like the answers of the Maharil, he doesn't say, therefore you should do it. He says, no, he says, Yasher Koyach Eretz Yisrael. you see clearly from the Beis Yosef, he doesn't want to overturn the custom. Although he said, I don't understand it, he said it's a doichik, and he goes on a whole arichas explaining very clearly why he feels like the logic of the Ma'aril, is not satisfactory, but he doesn't go to the point of knocking off the meaning, which he could have. He says, I'm just happy with what they do in Eretz Yisrael and Mitzrayim. So Ephraim Zamar Gola says, listen, it's kind of too late to change, But you want to know why? Okay, so first of all, I mentioned he brings the idea of number 2 about the nid in the house. But his main argument is like this. We had a shir a couple weeks ago where we mentioned some big poskim who really question the certainty of the status of koyanim today. We mentioned that the Rambam writes koyanim today, already over 1,000 years, are only koyanei chazaka. There's a presumption they're koyanim. There's a major debate in the poskim. What does that presumption mean? Does a presumption mean it's a questionable presumption or it's a definite presumption? And we mentioned that there were 2 great Svardish poskim, the Mabit and the Maharit. Father and son. The Mabit was together with Rabbi Yosef Kara in the court of Tzfas. The Mabit was a Rav for 54 years. So on his caver it says, Don Yodin Amoy. 54 years he'll judge his nation. And he was obviously he was one of the greatest Rabbanim of the time. He and his son, the Maharit, they both vehemently debate the point. They believe that the Rambam means it's a definite presumption. But we saw many others who say, no, it's a questionable presumption. If you remember the Marshtam, Reb Shmuel Di Modena, great Rav in Greece 500 years ago, who wanted to allow a Kohen today to live with a woman that was taken captive. Because a woman that was taken captive by a goy, only rabbinically do you have to assume that she was violated, which would make her a zayna. Minat Torah, you don't have to assume that's only rabbinic. And since it's a suffix, if the man is really a kohen, it's a suffix on a drabanan, right? And we mentioned all these things. That Yaakov Emden says the kohen has to give back the money, the pidyon haben, right? We saw all of that. So, as unpopular as this opinion might be, Ephraim Zal Margolis goes with it.
He was on that side.
And he believes that's why you don't duchen every day. And he says like this, imagine, if someone's taka only 50-50, let's say the guy who he himself he heard from his Zayda, 50-50. If you are a kohen and you don't duchen, right, what do you violate? So first was only if they call you up. You could leave shul before they say kohen, you won't violate anything. Even if you're there, what are you violating? A mitzvah asay, right? Or like the Gemara in Saita said, it's really 3, right? We thought, but you're violating it passively. But what about the chance that he's not a kohen and he duchens? A non-kohen that duchens violates the mitzvah asay of the Torah actively. The Torah says Aaron's kids should bench, not a non-kohen. If a non-kohen benches, he's actively violating a mitzvah asay. So he says, I don't get it. If someone's 50-50, just leave shul, then you have nothing wrong. Why would you take such a chance? You might be actively violating a biblical command. Furthermore, he says, the bracha. 50-50, how can you make a bracha? He says more than that. Because when it comes to a bracha levatala, there's a big debate between Rambam and Rabbeinu Tam. The Rambam holds if someone makes a bracha levatala, he violates a biblical command of not not mentioning Hashem's name in vain. Rabbeinu Tam holds no. If you say a bracha right now, shahakol, you don't drink anything, you praised Hashem, it's not in vain. You said a fact, benched be Hashem, shakol niyah b'dvarei. So Rabbeinu Tam holds any bracha levatala, it's never a biblical issue. It's only rabbinic. But Reb Margolis says, even if it's a rabbinic issue, why would you l'chadchila put yourself in a possible rabbinic issue?
Here's you can see Yeridus Adaris. One of the other people up until 200 years ago ever even thought this. You have the big pigs weighing on this. Rabbi Yosef Kaira talks about
if you remember in the previous
the Alter Rebbe. This guy comes 200 years ago. He starts knocking around.
If you remember the previous year, the Rivosh, who was 700 years ago, spoke about the story in Spain or Algeria, wherever it happened, that somebody was belittling a kohen, and they wanted to punish the guy. He said, you can't punish him because who said the guy's a Kohen? So that this idea already goes back 700
He's
years.
trying to find a way not to punish a guy. That's a different story.
Get a good lawyer.
This Rabbi Margol is just trying to explain that, why we do what we do in Chutz La'aretz.
You have all these opinions.
He's not creating the custom. It's not like he came and said, no one is allowed to duchen because who said you're a Kohen?
No,
he's
but
explaining why
you
the
had
custom is what it
greats
is.
Explaining why it is. Their reasons had nothing to do with Rabbi Margol.
Okay, but you had, first, wait. 3 of the reasons we said are very, Tirchid de Tzibur didn't, very hard to understand.
Tirchid de Tzibur, we stop a king from using a Sefer Torah in the base of Migdash for Tirchid de Tzibur.
Because that's Taka Tirchid Tzibur, but duchening takes 1 minute.
Okay, but...
No. Tirchid Tzibur is a good idea, but to apply...
It's a good idea, but he's
no,
not
but
denigrating a kohen.
the application seems hard to understand.
Yes,
the
that's
Maharil's
true.
reason of mikveh, the Beis Yosef threw out. The Pri Chadash's reason you didn't want to hear in the first place. All we're left with one reason of the Ramah. So you gotta have some variation. You gotta have epis.
It's funny that none of the other ones come up with that idea.
Anyhow, so anyways, he says.
they have?
He continues. So he continues. Good question. He could more than that. Some believe. Forget about the broch of Asher Kedishanu. The etzem birchas kohenim.
It's not the stockeld and the Nifora. When you make the bracha, there's a levorah. So it's not just a praising.
But he concedes Rabbeinu Tam would only hold this to Rabbanan. Because it's a statement. Hashem did command us to bench the. But still, why would one put himself in a situation he might be violating Rabbanan? He says, furthermore, some believe, forget about the bracha, even just the Yivarecha Hashem v'Yishmerecha, saying Hashem's name, although it's a pasuk, if you're not a kohen, it's also considered a bracha levatala, because you're doing a bracha, and if you're not a kohen, it's levatala. And then he throws in a 4th argument. I got to quote this. The 4th argument of Ephraim Samagolis is, look at number 6. Number 6 is from the Minchas Chinuch. The Minchas Chinuch on this week's parsha, where he speaks about the mitzvah of duchening. Ayin b'sefer haflah. Look in the book of the haflah. The haflah is from the students of the Maggid of Mezritch, Pinchas Bal Haflah, Pinchas Horowitz. Chelik ksuva b'perek beis ksuva shemevi b'shem sefer charedim. There's a well-known sefer charedim. The Rebbe quotes this in the Sichos too. The sefer charedim was times of the Arizal and Sfas. He authored actually the Yedid Nefesh, so we can think about him every Shabbos. He says, "The kashem the ala koyin in mitzvah ese levarich, just like the koyin of the mitzvah to bench, hachinami mitzvah saseh Yisrael is borch min koyinim. The Yidden have a mitzvah to be benched." He says, just like the koyinim have to bench, the Yidden have a mitzvah to be benched. So the Minchas Chinuch says like this: Im kein efsher, women and avodim maybe are not mechuyev in being benched. Ladas hasoivim, according to those, skip the brackets, why don't we do duchening at night? Efsher duhum in Torah. The fact we don't duchen at night, you never duchen at night, is that biblical or not? Because there's a hekesh of bracha l'shirus. We compare the brach of duchening to a kohen serving the Beis HaMikdash. Now, just like in the Beis HaMikdash, all the kabbanis has to be done before sundown, so too duchening. Is that a hekesh gomer complete comparison? If it's a complete comparison, that means biblically you can only duchen by day, not at night. That means duchening is a mitzvah's essay bound by time. That means even according to the Charedim, who says that every Jew has a mitzvah to be benched, not women, because it's a mitzvah's essay bound by time. It's a mitzvah's essay, man grama, women and servants potter. But in our Gemara in Tainis Daf Chazayin, it says clearly that this comparison of duchening to serving the Beis HaMikdash is only a rabbinic connection. Minat Torah, you could duchen at night. Imkain, women are chayiv to receive the duchening. Given the Minat Torah, it's not zman grom, it's like davening, which is fasting, which means women kohenim don't have a mitzvah to bench, but women Yisraelim have a mitzvah to be benched. Very, very interesting. Usually you think duchening is on kohenim, but when it comes to women, it's fakert. A woman who's a non-kohen, mamash has a mitzvah to be benched. A woman who's a kohen, the chayra, doesn't have a mitzvah not to bench, not to be benched either. But then he says, Shuv Motzasi Beritva. He found a Ritva Masechta Sukkah, who writes in the middle of his discussion that it's a mitzvah only on the Kohanim, different than the Charedim. So he says, Bechlal, there's a debate between the Ritva and the Charedim. The Ritva holds there's no mitzvah on the Jews to be benched. The Charedim holds there is, and according to the Charedim, it could come out that a non-Kohen woman actually is more involved in Duchening than a daughter of a Kohen. You wouldn't expect that.
She should be benched.
But that was B'nai Yisrael. Kohes Baruch was B'nai Yisrael. It's only non-Kohenim. What was with benching every day? So, by the way, the Rebbe in the Sichos has lots of lamdas about the Charedim, about why would it be. The Rebbe learns that whenever someone has a mitzvah, but they need to do it with a partner, then since the mitzvah can't be done without the other person becomes an integral part of the mitzvah and it pertains to them. So that's how the Rebbe explains the Charedim, that since a Kohen can't bench unless there's somebody there, so the Yid is an integral part to the Kohen's bracha, he becomes part of the mitzvah. That's how the Rebbe, exactly what the Rebbe learns as well, that with the Ran, Taka Prudavu, that's Taka. The Ran says that women, Minat Torah, are potter from having kids, but they become a partner with the husband's mitzvah. You're right. The question is if it's not mamish to the same degree. Rather, charedim is mamish mashma the zechir. Anyhow, so what does that have to do with us? Fascinating. Says Ephraim Zalman Margolus. You have a guy who's 50-50, maybe a kohen, maybe a non-kohen. If you're a non-kohen, then according to the charedim, you have a chiyuv not to be on the bimah. You have to be down here, getting benched. You can't be up there with the kohenim. If you go up there, you're shirking your obligation, biblical obligation, to receive the bracha. Fascinating. So these are the four arguments he says. He says, number one, if you're a non-kohen and you duchen, you're actively violating a mitzvah min HaTorah. Number two, how do you make the bracha? Number three, the Yevrechecho itself could be saying Hashem's name in vain if you're a non-kohen. And fourthly, he says, based on this charedim, in fact, it's not just him, the Haflah, in fact, says the same thing. The Haflah that the Minchas Chinuch quote says this, that based on the charedim, that if you're a non-kohen, you're the chiv to be benched, you can't be machmir to go on the bim and duchen. You have to be down here. You got to be in front of the kohenim, not with the kohenim.
Still stands. How does he?
So what about on Yom Tov? Well, he does. So he says like this. He said you got to know a story in Masechta Chulin. Abaye was a kohen, and originally it says he used to go to the people's homes and take all the gifts that should go to a kohen, and then people told him sepasnisht. So he used to wait until he was offered. So then he felt a pasnisht oichet, until he mamish came to a point where he said, you know what, other kohenim need the gifts more than me, I'm never going to take. Except I think once a year he would take, in order that his kahuna shouldn't be forgotten. So says Ephraim Zam Margolus, if someone's 50-50, they still have to be machmir like a kohen, right? They can't marry a divorcee, etc., not to go into a cemetery. If they're never going to duchen, they're going to, in order that they should, to hold on to their kahuna shaft. In fact, that's why they duchen on Yom Tov. And he proves it from Abaye's story that you see.
Is he a bachar? Is Rabbi Margolus a bachar?
He says, just like Abaye did something he didn't want to do once a year in order to perpetuate his kahuna status, so too on Yom Tov you duchen. So too on Yom Tov. By the way, you have to do that because if you don't allow him to make the bracha, the guy's going to be like, apparently I'm not a kohen, so I'm going to marry the divorcee. In order he shouldn't marry the divorcee, you got to allow him to make the bracha once every so often. You have to allow it, right? Yeah. By the way, Rabbi Yankov Emden said, if you remember, he says he thinks every kohen who's a firstborn should redeem themselves, because maybe they're not a kohen. But he says, I can't go so far, because then the guy's going to marry a divorcee. If we're going to make him redeem himself, he's going to say, apparently I'm not a kohen, so he's going to do everything a kohen shouldn't do. So we're not going to go so far. So it's the same logic over here. By the way, there was a Reb Chaim Volozhiner, the great student of the Gur, had a brother named Zalman of Volozhin, or Zalman of Vilna, who was mamish an incredible goyin. Nebuch died young, right? I think he was still in his 20s. Mamish, he knew the whole Torah off by heart. Mamish, a fascinating fellow. And he had lots of funny Litvish customs. He used to go to sleep with gloves. So if he woke up in the middle of the night, he wouldn't have to wash negovas. He could just learn right away. But I'll just throw in a quick story. Maybe I said this before. The Shagas Aryeh was originally a Rav in Volozhin. When he was younger, he was a rabbi in Volozhin. And there were very few sets of Shas in the city. There was one family who had a set of Shas. And he knocked on the door, and he asked if he could take 2 Gemaras. So the man of the house, he said, listen, usually the rule is one Gemara at a time, but for you can have 2 Gemaras. So he said, I bench you should have 2 children that will light up the world in Torah. And this couple had 2 kids, Reb Chaim of Volozhin, and his brother Reb Zalman. Reb Zalman of Volozhin, or Reb Zalman of Vilna as he was known, he gets into a discussion, how come there's no tsaras these days? Why? Like, what happened to tsaras? And he says, because the only way tsaras can be detected, be affirmed, one way or another, is by a kohen. And since there's no definite kohenim, therefore it could never be affirmed, so therefore the Eibusher removed it completely.
Rabbi Yeshua, when he was lifted, he said, what's going to be with the Goyim? He says, I'm not here and I don't have any more time.
Right, yeah, exactly. Yeah, we're in Tainas. And in Chagiga, yeah. Fine. So you see the Svaras, I'll tell you another place. You know, about 200 years ago, there was a major discussion about bringing carbon Pesach. If you're in Yerushalayim Erev Pesach, the Rambam says you don't need a Beis HaMikdash. As long as you could verify the place of the Mizbeach, you could bring karbonos. So that means if someone's in Yerushalayim and Erev Pesach, it's a chorus issue not to bring the carbon. And there was a major discussion between many poskim, but Rabbi Kiva Eger was involved and others. And one of the big tainas is the reason we don't do this because we don't have kohenim. We don't know for sure who's a kohen to do the service. So these ideas do often come up.
Didn't say that when he said it in 1947.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. Anyhow,
He said it the other way around. There's definitely
this-
Kayanim go out of the town.
Anyhow, so this was Ephraim Zalmar Golos, is one of his main arguments is that because we don't know if you're for sure a kohen, so how could you duchen every day? Now we go to the last thing is number 5. Number 5 is the Chassam Sofer. A letter of the Chassam Sofer. Nearly says the Chassam Sofer, Tam Poshut. You know why you don't duchen every day? He says a chassidische reason. The Nesias Kapayim Ksiv Bekra Achar Avodah. You know when in Parshas Shmini, Aaron benches us after they brought the karbonos. Ukedi alfinon in Masechta Megillah, midichsiv vayered masois achatas, after Aaron did the karbonos on the 8th day, vayevorach hasam, he benched the people. That means first you need service, then you bench. Utfila b'makam avodah, today's davening is in place of the karbonos. So first you daven, then you bench. That's why Duchening is at the end of Shemoneh Esrei. It's after Ritzei, which is called the bracha of Avodah. Ve'ein safek, he says, there's no question. Kishe'ein Avodah Ritzuya, if the service was abysmal, you can't bench. V'hi pigul chas v'sholom, if the service was invalid, then gam birchas kohenim lo tochel al misbarchim, the bracha will have no effect. Since Nebuch b'avnesein harabim, during the week, how do we daven? Nebuch, it's abysmal. The davening is abysmal. Kol yemois achol trudim ala michiv ala kakal, we're so busy worried about finances. Roivat tefillas, most davening is without proper kavana. He says tefillah without kavana is like an inappropriate carbon, and therefore you can't duchen. The bracha won't take effect. Al kei mavorchim b'yom tov. Why? Because on Yom Tov people daven properly. Yom Tov you're able to concentrate. Fascinating. That's the Chassam Sofer.
What is he writing? The cost of his where?
No, he brings from a machzer, but that's about someone benching their kids. On the next line, we have benching their kids.
How did you explain that only somebody that's married shari b'simcha? It's usually the opposite.
That didn't. We left. That was our big kasha. We left that with the big kasha. That was homework. Hold on. So I will tell you though that it's well known that the Vilna Gaon wanted to bring back duchening every day. I mean, so far, synopsis, we saw 6 reasons. The Kol Boy and the Ma'aril said Tircha de Tzibura. The Ma'aril then said this whole mikveh thing and it's too cold in the winter. The Beis Yosef didn't like it. We saw the Sefer HaMiksois about the Nida in the house. We saw the Ramah that you have to be in a joyful mood, and we saw all these halachas about the Oval and about the Bacher and etc. And who's joyful during the week? It's hard. The Parnasa gets to us. We saw the reason of the Beis Ephraim, that since someone's 50-50 a kohen, he has many reasons why he shouldn't duchen. How will he make a bracha? He might be violating a mitzvah. He'll be missing his own mitzvah of receiving the bracha, etc., etc. And the 6th reason we saw is the Chassam Sofer, that only after Ritzei, which is the bracha of Avodah, when the service is proper, will the bracha actually have a desired effect. And if the davening is nothing to be proud of, the bracha will be a waste of time. The Vilna Gaon wanted to bring back duchening. And in fact, when he made the takana to bring it back, there was some upheaval in Vilna and he was arrested by the government. Right away.
The Vilna Gaon?
Yeah. There was a story. He was arrested by the authorities right after he made this takana. So therefore he withdrew it. He withdrew it. His student, Reb Chaim of Volozhin, in the city of Volozhin, he readdressed the issue and he felt that his Rebbe wanted to duchen, we're duchening every day. And he made the takana at night, and the next morning they were going to duchen. The Netziv says half of Volozhin burnt down. The Netziv, who was married to a granddaughter, says that half of the city burnt down. So you see, the Vilna Gaon and his student Chaim Volozhin wanted to bring it back, but the Eibush had different plans. The Alter Rebbe also wanted to bring it back, but ultimately it didn't work. We mentioned in the beginning. Anyhow, but the reason the Alter Rebbe wanted to bring it back is because in his Shulchan Aruch he brings the reason of Ramah. Today, during the week, people are so caught up by Parnasa, who can say they're truly happy? But once a Yid has a Chassidish spirit, then you're able to, be a bissel hecher, not allow those issues to really bog you down, and then Duchening really should come back. So I leave it open to you, Rabbi Isai, if we're going to bring Duchening back or not.
Sleep in the other room. But that is scary.